we are joined by Robert Guenther. He is the Senior Vice President of Public Policy at United Fresh Produce Association. The purpose of these video interviews is to really shed light and educate consumers on the unprecedented impact that the coronavirus has had on the fresh produce industry.
Lori, thank you for having me. How I frame this a lot of times is think about over a 5-day period in March. So starting like March 14th through March 19th. Over that 5-day period, states announced lockdowns, schools closed down, restaurants and other entities closed down. When you look at that and you think about it in this way, within that 5-day period, 30 million school lunches, 15 million school breakfasts, and 100 million meals a day stopped being served after that 5-day period. The impact it has had on the supply chain of food, and in particular in our world, produce, has been significant. 40% of the supply chain of fresh produce goes into what we call institutional organizations or companies. Schools, restaurants, hotels, other entities, that food, it stopped. So we had this complete shutdown, almost a seizing of that supply chain in the fresh produce. What that really meant in terms of dollar numbers, about $5 billion in damages that we can extract from that time period. That put us into action of what we can do to help the industry. It's first getting the produce industry stabilized. Those people who grow product for food service, those people who distribute the middle folks in the supply chain, who are distributing the produce to restaurants and hotels and schools and places like that. How do we give them some level playing field, or at least some stabilization of their current predicament that they are in? The other important part is in the nutrition side of it. So despite schools being closed, there are a lot of people out there with needs for food. Food banks, schools are still doing curbside pickups. There's still a lot of opportunities out there to bring fresh produce into the supply chain, into the hands of the needy. We're also working with USDA to create a more streamlined process to pull product through, not the product right now necessarily, or the $5 billion, but that product looking forward until the normal supply chain gets stabilized, restaurants start opening back up, and normal course of business starts getting to a more normal level, so to speak.
And that also, as we talk about nutrition programs, I know because that's one of the areas where I align with United Fresh. It is beyond school meals. That includes WIC
Right.
and other child nutrition programs and feeding programs, hunger relief programs that are part of our federal government. We are working as an industry to make sure that those programs are still accessible to the growing number of American families that need them, and making sure that we have a fresh produce stakehold in those programs.
That's right. Lori, that's a great point, because nobody's just sitting there waiting for the government to come and help them. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with companies and industries and growers who are looking to find those folks most in need to give their product to today. They're not needing the government to help them out or tell them what to do. There is that work going on now. What we're looking at is more of a stable flow, what I like to call a pull through a product that currently needs to be put through the system that can be directed to people who are requesting that. Because we're getting a lot of requests from food banks, we're getting a lot of requests from school districts and state school associations. They would like to include fresh produce as part of their giving to the people who they are serving.
When you talk about pulling that product through, you essentially mean product that is actively within the supply chain, whether it's currently warehoused or in a kitchen somewhere, or maybe even in the ground scheduled to be harvested soon. Our goal as an industry is to really mitigate the waste. We want to find a home for all of this food, realizing that the playbook has obviously been disrupted. The world is different.
Lori, that's exactly right. So this isn't just product that's currently in the supply chain waiting for a home. It also is product that is currently in the ground, maybe can't be redirected to retail, for instance, that needs to home, so to speak, to pull it through in food service. And our industry's got the capability, they've got the transportation, the logistics, the know-how, the ability to bring product to more of a consumer-ready type package. The joke was a family is not going to get a 20-pound bag of shredded lettuce, so to speak, but the industry can certainly adapt those products into more of a consumer-ready packaging that will help families that can use that product in real time.
And it's amazing how political action and leadership from United Fresh Produce Association in DC is not just a catalyst, but it's really a necessity. One thing that I've learned is everything's a public-private partnership. And agriculture is certainly part of that, you know, it's crazy.
Right. It's been critical to be on the ground. There's a lot of need out there. When you talk about the money that the government is generating to try to address this issue, having a voice to talk with the different agencies that we're working with, not just at USDA, but Department of Labor and Immigration and H2A H2A programs, for instance, for workers. The Small Business Administration, we're hearing a lot from our members who are trying to apply for those loans. There's a lot of different agencies that are touching our industry, some that we traditionally may not have spent as much time with. We can better communicate with them in a more effective and direct way as being in DC. The other part I mentioned is the political support as well. Us being able to deliver that message. You're working on this piece of legislation. There are really unique and immediate needs that need to be addressed in our industry. This is real. This is what's happening. We're telling you this. We can get you linked up with people in the industry to explain this to you if you need. But this is what we do as a trade association. And the last point on that is the ability to unite a broad cross-section of our industry and support this effort. It's critical. United Fresh is one voice. I think it's a very important voice, very critical voice. That's why we're in Washington, D.C., but also having the partners that we have throughout the industry and other associations at the state, local, commodity-specific, regional level is also a critical voice to amplify our message and the importance of this to address this by the government.
What other critical issues right now would you say that you want consumers and our audience today to be aware of?
You touched on your conversation with Dante, and he's a great resource for the issues, especially on the labor farm worker side. I think that's another area we're spending a lot of time on is that employee, not just the companies and the names, but the employees involved in these companies, from the farmer all the way up through the distribution supply chain. The important element of that is farming and agriculture and food has been categorized as essential to the United States, and therefore they can keep running and being maintained as an essential part of our business sector. It needs to keep going. Also brings challenges of how to work in this new environment with social distancing, with all the things that are going on within an environment that is usually very closely quartered, close proximity to your coworker, and how do you deal with that? So we're spending, just as the growing season and harvest season starts to pick up more and more as the weather gets warm, how are we going to keep managing that process of harvesting the products, getting it packed and shipped, getting it to the consumers? And how does that impact the employees?
A whole new world of compliance almost.
Exactly. Just like on the front lines of the healthcare industry, having the proper equipment, mask, hand sanitizer, gloves, critical part. How do some of these employees who come in through the H2A program that Dante mentioned, how are they going to be living, so to speak, in an environment where you need to be separated? The industry is really working hard to come up with some solutions and a unified way to address that, because everything's different. How you house people in the West Coast is maybe different than the Midwest and different in the Southeast. What are you using in terms of housing? I think it's important that we continue to work on this as the supply chain becomes more available, so to speak, as the summer moves along, that we've got to keep our eye on that very closely. We've got to keep working with our members about how to address their employee in terms of keeping them safe, because we need them. They're a critical part of the industry. They're a critical part of the family of fresh produce, so to speak, and making sure that they're healthy and they're taken care of is paramount for our industry. And I know a lot of the people who employ them are in that same mindset as well.
Thank you for your time today and for sharing your insights with our community. It's really so important as the Produce Moms has evolved into being that trusted platform and resource for
Sure.
throughout the United States. I mean, the only way we're able to do that is by bringing in experts for each of these different critical areas for our industry.
Sure.
So we really thank you and everyone at United for your support and what you've done for not only myself and the Produce Moms as a business, but also the way that you're helping us be that trusted voice and fact-based resource for consumers.
Great.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Lori, and it's been a pleasure being with you today.